Welcome back to another beginner series video for Unreal Engine 4, and today I want to talk about what are functions and what are variables and how to use those. If you don't have a programming background, this video will probably be very useful for you, because essentially what we actually are doing, we are actually coding, but instead of writing all kinds of different letters and numbers and all that stuff, we are just simply using the node system. But well, once we are done with creating our nodes, when we compile the game, we are getting actually the code is getting created in the background, and that's how our games actually run. So let's go to our third-person BP folder blueprints, and let's open up our character blueprint. And here is where all the functions and the variables would be. Well, not only in the character, it can be in any actor. So first, let's talk about, we have some tabs over here. We have the viewport where we can see our character, we have the construction script, and we have the event graph. So the construction script, so here you can do some blueprints. So the white line is always going to be like, imagine this is a road that we are driving down, and then all the things that are getting ran through the white line are the functions or events or any actions that we might perform. And construction script, this thing gets ran during the time when the actor is getting created. Then later on, all the other actions that would happen during the gameplay or whatever, well, anyway, later after the actor has been spawned, will happen in the event graph. So to add anything to the event graph, what you can do is just simply right click anywhere, and here we have the search, or we can just look for the things on our own, but well, searching on our own is going to take a lot of time, so it's better to just search something. So one of the most common things that you're going to use is something called if in the programming, but in Unreal Engine they call it branch. And this basically is a thing that checks whether a specific condition is true or false, and then depending on the result, true goes out here and the false goes to this route. But well, we're gonna get to that in a second. So first, let's talk about what are variables. So variables are found on the left side of the screen. Over here we have a couple of them by default. Some of the components are getting created as variables as well. So you can see camera boom, and arrow are made as variables. And also by default you have the base turn rate and base lookup rate. I think the names are pretty much self-explanatory, and essentially variable can hold some kind of an information. So if you have like HP, or you have like score or whatever, that will be your variable. And to add new variable, you can just simply click on this plus sign, so variable plus, and this instantly creates you a new variable. So now you can select that, and on the right side in the details panel you can change its information. So first is the variable name. So let's call this health. This is going to be our character's health, for example. Now we need to change the variable type so that it would hold numbers, because, well, if we click on this thing right now, here are some of the most common variables that are getting used. So let me explain some of them. So Boolean can hold two values. As you can see, if you hover over it, it gives you an explanation. So it can hold true or false. As you can see also in the branch, the condition is red, and once you hover over it, it says Boolean. And a lot of these variables are color coded kind of, so basically every single one of them have a different color. So red one is the Boolean, which contains two values. It's whether true or it's false, and it's never anything else. It's one of those two values. So that's a Boolean, and it's in red. Byte is a 8-bit number, which isn't really used a lot. Now the next thing is integer and integer 64. So these are full numbers, so 0, 1, 2, 10, 100, whatever number. The difference between integer and integer 64-bit is that the integer 64-bit can hold bigger numbers, because all of them obviously have some kind of a cap. You can't go into the infinity, they have a limit, but in most of the cases the regular integer is good enough, unless you want to do some astronomical numbers. The next one is property reference. So this thing would be a reference to some kind of an actor technically. Then we have a float. Float is also a number, but float allows you to add commas. So this can be like 1.1 or 5.7, which integer can't. Integer can be just a full number 1, 2, 3, while float can be 0.5, 1.7, and all that stuff. Then the next three variables are name, string, and text. All of them, so basically name is just one name, text is a bunch of text, and string is essentially the same thing. It is just a text field that can hold text. Since I have a background in PHP and web development, I often use strings. If you watched my previous videos, you've probably already noticed me using strings a lot because I'm just very used to using strings. But all these three are just texts. Then the next three are vector, rotation, and transform. So the vector, so if we would click on that, actually every time we click on one and we change the type, you can see now it's yellow, so it's a vector type. Then you need to compile the blueprint and you can see the default value. Vector contains of three axes, Z, Y, and X. Vector technically is like a location, so you can specify a location in the 3D space. So if we would select any of the actors, you can see on the right side in the details we have the location, and that is a vector. So we have the X, Y, Z. Also, the scale usually is a vector, so location and scale is a vector. And now you're probably wondering, like, why the rotation is also XYZ. Yes and no, because for the rotation, so if we would change this to a rotator, it also has three axes because you can rotate things in three axes. But for the rotation, they use the rotator, so the gray variable type. Now for the transform holds all three of those things that we just spoke about. It holds location, rotation, and scale. So very often you will be using a transform if you need like a location and rotation, then it's often best to use the transform because it already holds all the information where the object is located, in what rotation, and in what kind of sizing. Now those are the very basic variables, but everything can be a variable. In Unreal Engine, at least, everything can be a variable. You can make your character into a variable, you can make whatever into a variable. So let's make our health into our character variable. So how would you do that is look at the name, so this is the third person character, and just type in third person character. There we go. So we can select that, and now we have a variable that is essentially our character. But well, most of the times you're not going to specify a specific actor. You sometimes will and sometimes you won't. If you need like a wildcard so that you can be many different actors, you can just simply search for a actor. So object type actor, click on it, and there you go. Your variable is now an actor. But one thing to keep in mind of is that by default it's going to be an empty reference, so it's not exactly going to reference to your character or to that one specific actor that you have imagined, because you need to specify which one it is, because you could have like 10 different flowers that are actors, so you need to specify which exact flower this is. Now rest of the properties are not too important as of right now, because it will take a lot of time to explain all of this. One thing that could be very useful is the category. You can type whatever you want in here. You just simply categorize things in your variables tab. You can see we have my character, we have components, and then we have rest of the variables. So let's say we want to type in, like, let's call this stats, and as soon as I hit enter, I have this in the stats tab. So now this allows me to categorize my variables so that it's easier for me to find them. Now I will change my health variable type to be a float because, well, it's going to be easier a little bit for me to work in floats, I believe, at least for the health itself. You can obviously use integer as well if you want. Now I'm gonna add another variable real quick, and I'm gonna call this level, and levels obviously will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those probably will then need to be an integer since those are full numbers. Now by default I'm gonna type in 1. This gives me some kind of an interesting error. Count parse value 400. Okay, so that was a glitch, so we recompiled and it's gone. I was planning on talking about functions and events in this video as well, but this is getting a little bit long, so I'm gonna cut the video here and we're gonna continue tomorrow. So thank you for watching, and I see you tomorrow.